They called me a gold digger at my own engagement party, their whispers slicing through the glittering ballroom like a cold wind. I'm Jasmine, a third-grade teacher with a heart full of dreams, standing in a room of strangers who think I'm not enough for their golden boy Ryan. That night, 6 months ago, changed everything, exposing truths I never expected. If you've ever felt judged for who you are, this story will hit you hard. Stay with me, and don't miss what's coming. Picture me now, my palms sweaty, clutching a champagne flute, the fizz mirroring the unease bubbling inside me. I'm in a simple red dress, surrounded by diamonds and disdain, wondering how love brought me to a place where I feel so small. Let me take you back to where it all began, to a coffee shop downtown where I was grading papers, lost in my world of lesson plans and crayon-scribbled dreams. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air smells faintly of roasted beans and fallen leaves. I sat at my usual corner table, papers spread out, red pen in hand, when a stranger bumped into my table, sending my coffee splashing across my work. I looked up, ready to snap, but his apologetic smile stopped me cold. Ryan was all charm, dark hair, warm brown eyes, and a laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I'm so sorry," he said, grabbing napkins to mop up the mess. Instead of leaving, he sat down, insisting on buying me another coffee. We talked for hours about my third graders, his finance job, and the little things that make life spark. His genuine interest in my stories about teaching, the way his eyes didn't glaze over when I rambled about shaping young minds, hooked me. Most people tune out, but Ryan leaned in, asking questions, laughing at my tales of classroom chaos. Our connection grew fast, like wildflowers after spring rain. Ryan had a way of making my modest life feel grand. He'd show up with my favorite blueberry scones or sunflowers just because he passed a florist. One evening, after a long day of parent-teacher conferences, he appeared at my tiny apartment with Thai takeout, sprawling on my worn couch like it was a palace throne. "This is perfect," he'd say, pulling me close as we watched old movies, his arm warm around my shoulders. My kitchen, barely big enough for two, became our stage for late-night cooking sessions, burnt pasta and laughter filling the air. I knew he came from money. His tailored jackets, sleek car, and downtown penthouse hinted at it, but he never flaunted it. He'd mention family dinners or business trips casually, never making me feel less for my rented apartment or teacher's salary. The proposal came 5 months later, back at that same coffee shop. Ryan slid a small velvet box across the table, his eyes nervous but bright. "Jasmine, you make every day better," he said, voice low. "Will you marry me?" My heart leapt. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The ring sparkled, simple but elegant, just my style. But then he mentioned the engagement party his family was throwing, and a shadow crossed his face. "They're excited to meet you," he said, squeezing my hand, but I caught the flicker of worry in his eyes when he mentioned his mother, Patricia. I brushed it off, too caught up in the moment, but that flutter of anxiety planted a seed. What kind of world was I stepping into? The week before the party, I agonized over my outfit. I wanted to fit in but stay true to myself, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. I settled on a red dress from a department store, elegant but not flashy, hoping it would strike the right balance. Ryan picked me up, his tie slightly crooked, his usual confidence tinged with nerves. "You look beautiful," he said, but I noticed his fingers fidgeting as we drove toward his family's estate. The city gave way to sprawling lawns, and when we pulled up to the mansion, my breath caught. It wasn't just a house, it was a fortress of wealth, with marble columns, a circular driveway packed with luxury cars, and gardens that seemed to stretch into forever. "Wow," I whispered, my dress suddenly feeling like a costume. Ryan squeezed my hand. "It's just a house, Jasmine. They're just people." But as we stepped through those towering doors, I knew this was no ordinary crowd. The air was thick with old money. Diamonds glinting, watches flashing, everyone moving with the ease of those who never worry about bills. Patricia, Ryan's mother, glided toward us, her silver hair flawless, her cream dress screaming designer. "Jasmine, darling," she said, air kissing my cheeks, her smile as cold as the marble floor. "How lovely to meet you." Her eyes flicked over my dress, my shoes, my simple earrings, assessing me in a heartbeat. "Thank you for hosting, Mrs. Patterson," I said, trying to sound confident. "Your home is stunning." "Please call me Patricia," she replied, her tone polite but edged. "I hope you'll be comfortable here." The word comfortable landed like a jab. She didn't think I could be. Before I could respond, Amanda, Ryan's sister, appeared, her sculpted eyebrows rising as she scanned me. "So you're the teacher?" she said, making it sound like I'd admitted to something shameful. "How noble working with children. I'm sure it's fulfilling." Her smirk said the opposite. I swallowed hard, my cheeks warming but kept my voice steady. "I love what I do. Seeing kids light up when they learn something new, it's everything." Amanda's patronizing nod told me she wasn't impressed. Ryan stepped closer, sensing the tension. "Jasmine's amazing at her job," he said. "Her students adore her." But Amanda just smiled, and I felt the first cracks in my confidence. This wasn't just a party, it was a test, and I was already failing. As the evening unfolded, the judgments kept piling on like layers of an unwelcome fog. But let's rewind a bit to understand how I got here. Wrapped in Ryan's world that felt both magical and precarious. Our relationship had blossomed so naturally after that first coffee spill, turning chance into something deeper. Ryan wasn't the type to sweep in with grand gestures at first. It was the small things that built us up. Like the time he surprised me at school during lunch break with a picnic basket full of sandwiches and fruit, sitting on the playground bench while I vented about a tough day with hyperactive kids. "You're changing lives," he'd say, his hand on mine, making me believe it even more. We spent weekends exploring the city on foot, my budget-friendly dates of park walks and street food, which he embraced without complaint. He'd trade his luxury car for my old bike rides, laughing as we pedaled through neighborhoods, wind messing our hair. His penthouse became our occasional escape, but even there, he'd dim the lights and cook simple meals, saying my presence made it home. What I loved most was how he valued my passion. Teaching wasn't just a job to me, it was my calling. I'd share stories of little victories, a student finally grasping multiplication, or a shy kid speaking up in class, and Ryan would listen, eyes sparkling, asking for more details. "You're a hero to those kids," he'd tell me, and in those moments, our worlds didn't feel so different. But hints of his background crept in. He'd mention yacht trips from childhood or family vacations in Europe, always downplaying them. But I sensed the gap. My family was solid but simple. Dad fixing cars in his garage, Mom stocking shelves at the local store. No trust funds, no summer homes. Still, Ryan never made me feel inadequate. When I'd fret about my student loans over dinner, he'd wave it off. "We'll tackle that together," he'd say, his easy confidence soothing my worries. Our dates evolved. Movie nights turned into cozy evenings where he'd read my lesson plans aloud, pretending to be a student, his impressions cracking me up until tears streamed down my face. The proposal snuck up on me in the best way. It was our 6-month anniversary, back at the coffee shop, the place where fate had bumped us together. We sat at our table, reminiscing, when Ryan pulled out the ring. "Jasmine, you've brought color to my life I didn't know was missing," he said. Voice steady, but eyes vulnerable. The diamond caught the light modestly, not overwhelming like something from his world might be. I said yes through happy tears, the barista cheering from behind the counter. We celebrated with lattes and walks in the park, planning a future that felt ours alone. But then came the mention of the engagement party. "Mom's insisting," Ryan said, his smile fading slightly. "She wants to do it big at the estate." I nodded, excitement mixed with nerves. "They're going to love you," he assured me, but that worried flicker returned when he spoke of Patricia. I should have probed more, but love blinded me to the storm brewing. In the days leading up, my anxiety grew like weeds in a garden. I scoured my closet, trying on outfits that screamed, "I'm worthy," without trying too hard. The red dress won, knee-length, fitted but not flashy, paired with my best heels. I practiced small talk in the mirror, imagining conversations about teaching that wouldn't bore them. Ryan texted encouragement. "Can't wait to show you off." But as we drove to the estate that night, his fidgeting mirrored my own. The mansion loomed like a fairy tale gone wrong, its grandeur intimidating under the twilight sky. Inside, the opulence hit harder. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbows, floral arrangements taller than me, servers weaving through with trays of delicacies I'd only seen in magazines. Patricia's welcome was polished but probing, her assessment quick and cutting. Amanda's barbs followed, turning teacher into a punchline. As Ryan pulled me into the crowd, introducing me to aunts and uncles, each handshake felt like an interview. "State University?" one aunt echoed, her tone implying pity. How quaint. My responses about paying off loans, jumping straight into teaching, drew polite nods but awkward silences. Student loans? In their realm, education was a gift, not a debt. Standing by the champagne table later, I watched Ryan charm the room effortlessly, his laughter blending with theirs. This was his element, born into it, while I felt like an intruder. A group of women nearby chatted, their voices carrying. "She's sweet, but really," one said. "Ryan could do better." "It's the money," another whispered. "Look at her. Pretty, but so common." My glass trembled, the bubbles mocking my rising hurt. They didn't know me, yet they branded me a fortune hunter. Ryan, deep in talk with uncles about stocks or whatever, missed it all. The evening dragged, insults sharpening. Uncle Gerald, tipsy, boomed, "At least she's upgrading her life." Laughter erupted, a dagger to my chest. I slipped to the terrace for air, the cool breeze a brief mercy. My phone buzzed. Daniel checking in. "Party good? Treating you right?" Tears pricked my eyes. Daniel, my big brother, always the shield. He'd sacrificed for my college, proud of my independence. But he didn't know this cruelty. Staring at the gardens, Patricia joined me, her honesty veiled in concern. "This life isn't for everyone," she said gently, implying I wasn't cut out for it. Her words stung deepest, wrapped in false kindness. Back inside, Amanda's mockery peaked, imitating my voice. "Making a difference with third graders, how cute." The room quieted as I stepped forward, voice steady. "It does matter," I said, defending my work. But Amanda twisted it, satisfaction in her eyes. My phone buzzed again, Daniel offering backup. "Come now?" I texted, address sent, his reply, "On my way." Relief washed over me. I announced I'd wait outside, ignoring Patricia's pleas. 20 minutes later, SUVs rolled up, not Daniel's car, but a secure convoy. Security emerged, then Daniel, suited and commanding. "Mike, my secret, he's Daniel Chen, tech billionaire." I'd hidden it, wanting authentic love. Now, as he hugged me, the house stirred. Recognition dawning. This was the twist they'd never see coming. As Daniel pulled me into that familiar hug, the kind that always made the world feel a little less chaotic, I could sense the ripple of surprise spreading through the mansion, like a wave crashing against its marble walls. The cool night air carried the scent of manicured roses from the gardens, mixing with the faint exhaust from the idling SUVs. But inside, through the glowing windows, faces pressed close, eyes wide with confusion. Daniel straightened, his suit impeccable under the driveway lights, and glanced toward the door. "Let's go in and sort this out," he said softly, his voice steady as always, the protector mode kicking in. I nodded, my heart pounding not just from the evening's wounds, but from the impending storm about to break loose. We'd kept his success quiet in my life. I'd insisted on it, wanting to carve my path without the shadow of his billions. But now, as we walked up the steps, flanked by his security team who scanned the area with professional detachment, I wondered if hiding it had been a mistake or a blessing. The front door swung open before we could knock. Patricia framed in the threshold like a statue suddenly come to life, her elegant poise cracking at the edges. Her cream dress caught the light from the chandelier behind her, but her face had drained of color. Lips parted in a silent gasp. "Mr. Chen?" she managed, her voice a mix of awe and alarm, as if she'd summoned a ghost by accident. The buzz from inside grew louder, guests craning necks, whispers turning to murmurs. Daniel smiled politely, but there was an edge to it, the CEO surfacing. "Mrs. Patterson, I presume," he replied, extending a hand. "I'm here for my sister." She shook it mechanically, stepping aside, her eyes darting to me as if seeing me anew. Behind her, the foyer filled with family and friends, their earlier smugness evaporating like morning mist. Amanda hovered nearby, her confident smirk gone, replaced by a slack-jawed stare. I caught sight of Ryan pushing through, his brow furrowed in bewilderment, piecing together the puzzle too late. We stepped into the grand entrance hall, the same one where I'd felt so diminished hours earlier, but now the atmosphere had flipped. The marble floors echoed our footsteps, the air heavy with expensive perfumes and the subtle hum of shock. Daniel's presence commanded the space. He wasn't just my brother. He was a force, built from late nights coding in our parents' marmor basement to boardrooms across the globe. I'd watched him rise, turning a college startup into Chen Industries, a tech giant revolutionizing software and AI, worth more than most in this room could fathom. But to me, he was still the guy who'd sneak me ice cream after bad days at school. Jasmine didn't mention. Patricia trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the security detail who positioned themselves discreetly by the doors. We weren't expecting such distinguished company. Daniel's arm stayed around my shoulders, a silent anchor. I imagine not, he said evenly. But when my sister calls, I come. Sounds like she's had quite the welcome. The crowd parted as we moved deeper into the room. The same ballroom where whispers had cut me down, now silent, except for the occasional gasp of recognition. Is that Daniel Chen? Someone murmured, pulling out a phone to confirm. The tech billionaire? Another voice chimed in, hushed but urgent. Heads turned, eyes widening. Uncles who joked about my upgrade now straightened ties, aunts clutching pearls a bit tighter. Amanda finally spoke, her voice higher than usual. Jasmine, you're related to him? She looked at me like I'd transformed before her eyes, her earlier disdain crumbling into awkward deference. I met her gaze, the hurt from her mocks still fresh. He's my brother, I said simply, no need for fanfare. Ryan reached us then, his face a storm of emotions, shock, guilt, confusion. Jasmine, why didn't you say anything? He asked, voice low, glancing at Daniel as if he were a celebrity intruder. Daniel turned to him, sizing him up with that quiet intensity he used in negotiations. She shouldn't have to, he replied for me. Jasmine wanted to be seen for who she is, a dedicated teacher, a kind soul, not for my name or my company. Ryan flushed, rubbing the back of his neck. I get that, but this changes things. Does it? I thought, a pang twisting in my chest. Shouldn't love stand on its own? The room's energy shifted further as word spread. People who dismissed my state university degree now eyed me with calculated interest, wondering how to pivot. Patricia recovered slightly, smoothing her dress. Please, Mr. Chen, join us for a drink. We had no idea Jasmine came from such an accomplished family. Her tone was sweeter now, laced with opportunism, but Daniel waved it off gently. I'm not here for pleasantries. Jasmine told me about the evening, the comments, the assumptions. Gold digger? Really? I felt a surge of validation as he spoke, recounting what I'd texted him in fragments, the way they'd probed my background, mocked my salary, questioned my motives. New details flooded my mind. An aunt earlier asking about my quaint apartment, implying it was a step down for Ryan. A cousin snickering about my dress looking off the rack. I'd held back tears then, but now with Daniel here, I added softly, they said my job was delusional, that I couldn't fit in. His jaw tightened, and he addressed the group, voice carrying without effort. My sister has more integrity in her little finger than most people accumulate in a lifetime. She chose teaching over easy paths because she believes in impact, helping kids read, think, grow. That's worth more than any fortune. Murmurs of agreement trickled in, forced and uneasy, from those who'd laughed before. Uncle Gerald, red-faced from wine and regret, muttered an apology, but it rang hollow. As the confrontation brewed, I glanced around the opulent space, the gold-trimmed walls, the artwork that could fund a school for years, and felt a strange detachment. This mansion, once intimidating, now seemed fragile, built on judgments that shattered so easily. Patricia tried to steer things, offering hors d'oeuvres, but Daniel kept the focus. What disappoints me is the hypocrisy, he continued, his words measured. You assumed Jasmine was after money because she's from a modest background. But now, knowing her family has more than yours, you're scrambling. That says everything about your values. Amanda shifted uncomfortably, her eyes downcast, while Ryan pulled me aside briefly. I'm sorry I didn't see it, he whispered. I should have stepped in. But his apology felt tied to this revelation, not the pain itself. I squeezed his hand, unsure, as the evening's tension peaked. Little did I know. This was just the beginning of the unraveling. The unraveling started slow, like a thread pulling loose from a seam. But once it began, it tugged everything apart in ways I couldn't have anticipated. With Daniel standing there in the foyer, his presence a shield against the stairs, I felt a mix of relief and lingering ache from the hours that had led to this moment. The guests, who had been so quick to dismiss me, now hovered in clusters, their conversations hushed but frantic. Phones discreetly checked as if confirming Daniel's identity, could rewrite the night's script. Patricia gestured toward the sitting room, her hospitality forced. "Please, let's move to a more comfortable space," she suggested, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of the shift. But Daniel shook his head. "We're fine here. I think it's time everyone understood exactly what happened tonight." I glanced at Ryan, his eyes pleading with me for some signal, but I turned away, the isolation I'd felt earlier still echoing in my chest. How had it built to this? Let me pull back the curtain on those painful hours before Daniel's arrival, when the judgments weren't just whispers, but wounds that piled up, leaving me questioning everything. It started innocently enough after the initial introductions, as Ryan led me through the crowd, his hand warm in mine, but his attention divided. Aunts and uncles smiled politely, but their questions dug like subtle shovels. "Where did you study, dear?" one aunt asked, her diamond earrings swaying as she tilted her head. "A state university," I replied, proud of my hard-earned degree. "Oh, how accessible," she said, the word dripping with unspoken pity, as if Ivy League was the only path worth taking. Another uncle chimed in about my parents' jobs, Dad's mechanic shop, Mom's grocery shifts, and nodded sagely. Honest work, that's admirable in its way. But his tone implied it was a relic from another era, not something to aspire to. Each exchange highlighted the chasm, my world of public service and theirs of private jets. I tried to steer conversations to shared ground, books, travel dreams, but they circled back to status symbols I lacked, my simple jewelry, charming in its minimalism. My apartment, cozy must be nice after a long day. The compliments weren't kind, they were code for lesser. As the night wore on, I found myself drifting to the edges, nursing a glass of champagne that had gone flat, much like my spirits. Ryan was across the room, animated in discussion with his uncles about market trends or golf courses, his laughter genuine but distant. He glanced my way occasionally, waving me over, but when I approached, the group would shift topics seamlessly to something exclusive, like summer homes in the Hamptons, leaving me nodding along, an outsider looking in. That's when the whispers grew bolder. Standing near a group of women about my age, their designer gowns rustling like secrets, I overheard them clear as day. "She's pleasant, but come on," one said, sipping her drink. "Ryan's too naive, always picking up strays." "It's textbook gold digger," another replied, her voice low but not low enough. "Pretty face, modest job, eyes on the prize. Remember his college girlfriend? At least she had pedigree." I froze, the words landing like punches, my hand tightening on the glass stem to keep from shattering it. They didn't even glance my way, assuming I was out of earshot, reducing me to a stereotype without a second thought. The isolation deepened, a heavy blanket smothering my confidence. I excused myself to the powder room, splashing water on my face, staring at my reflection in the gilded mirror. Who was this woman looking back, flushed cheeks, eyes shiny with unshed tears? I'd come here full of hope, but now doubt crept in. Maybe I didn't belong. Back in the ballroom, the insults turned more direct. Patricia cornered me near a floral display, her perfume cloying as she leaned in. "Jasmine, I must be frank," she said, her maternal mask slipping. "Ryan's our heir, fortune, company, all of it. We need to ensure his partner understands the demands." I swallowed, whispering, "I love him for who he is." She patted my arm. "Love fades when realities hit. Backgrounds, obligations. Are you prepared?" Her words echoed my fears, making me wonder if our differences were insurmountable. Meanwhile, Amanda gathered cousins by the fireplace, her voice carrying without restraint. "A teacher? She probably spends less annually than my spa visits," she laughed, mimicking my earlier enthusiasm. "And that dress. Target chic?" The group erupted in giggles, and I felt heat flood my face, humiliation burning like acid. Ryan remained blissfully unaware, caught up in family banter, his obliviousness a betrayal in itself. Why didn't he notice my fading smiles, my retreats to the terrace? Uncle Gerald, emboldened by bourbon, added his slurred wisdom. "Can't fault her for aiming high, never seen real money before." More laughter, each peel a nail in my self-esteem. I stepped outside again, the night air crisp against my skin, stars mocking my smallness. My phone became my lifeline, Daniel's text glowing, "If trouble, I'm here." He'd always been my rock, working extra shifts to fund my dreams, celebrating my independence. But tonight, I needed more than words. "Come now," I typed, fingers trembling. His instant reply, "A dress, on my way." Waiting in the driveway, I heard Patricia's voice trailing after me, but I was done pleading for acceptance. Then the SUVs appeared, lights cutting the darkness, security spilling out like guardians. Daniel emerged, his hug erasing some of the sting. As we re-entered, the house's facade cracked. The same people who'd isolated me now faced the consequences of their cruelty. With the facade cracking around us, the foyer felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm, everyone suspended in that awkward limbo between denial and reckoning. Daniel turned to me, his eyes gentle but probing, encouraging me to speak up in a way I hadn't all evening. "Tell them, Jasmine," he said softly. "What exactly happened before I got here? Let's lay it all out." I hesitated, the memories still raw, but his steady presence gave me the strength to dive back into those moments, the direct hits that had pushed me to my edge. The crowd leaned in, unwilling spectators now, as I began to recount the build-up, the private barbs and public humiliations that had turned a celebration into a trial. It wasn't just the whispers. It was the moments when the masks dropped completely, when politeness gave way to outright cruelty, leaving me shattered and reaching for my phone as my last lifeline. It had escalated after the initial rounds of introductions, when the subtle digs turned into something more pointed, more personal. I'd been trying to mingle, forcing smiles through the growing discomfort, when Patricia pulled me aside into the powder room, away from the main bustle. The room was a sanctuary of luxury. Gold faucets, scented soaps, mirrors that reflected my unease back at me tenfold. She followed me in, closing the door with a soft click, her expression shifting from distant courtesy to something sharper, more calculated. "Jasmine, dear," she started, reapplying her lipstick with deliberate strokes, her reflection meeting mine in the glass. "I hope you won't mind if I speak plainly. Ryan is everything to us, the future of our legacy, the company, the responsibilities that come with it all." Her words hung heavy, laced with implication. I nodded, whispering, "I understand that. I care about him deeply." But she turned fully then, her eyes cool and assessing. "Do you? Because attraction is one thing, but compatibility? Similar worlds, shared understandings, these matter when the honeymoon phase ends. We've seen it before with Ryan. He's trusting, perhaps too much. I just want to make sure you're thinking this through, for both your sakes." Her advice felt like a velvet-gloved slap, suggesting I was a temporary infatuation, not a lifelong partner. All because my life didn't mirror theirs. I wanted to fire back, to list all the ways Ryan and I connected beyond money, the late-night talks, the shared laughs over simple joys, but her certainty silenced me. "Love doesn't always bridge those gaps," she added, her tone almost pitying, as if she were doing me a favor by pointing out my inadequacies. I left the powder room feeling smaller, the weight of her warnings pressing down, making me question if I was delusional for thinking I could fit into this polished existence. Back in the ballroom, the air seemed thicker, the laughter sharper, and that's when Amanda took center stage, her mockery no longer veiled but flung out like confetti at a parade I wasn't invited to. She'd gathered a knot of cousins and friends by the grand fireplace, the flames casting dramatic shadows on their faces, her voice rising above the orchestral music playing softly in the background. I hovered nearby, hoping to join a conversation that didn't revolve around my shortcomings, but Amanda spotted me and turned it into sport. "Oh look, the educator has returned," she announced, her lips curling in a smirk that drew chuckles from the group. "Tell us more about your noble calling, wiping noses and teaching ABCs. How utterly fulfilling, especially on that salary." She laughed, a bright, cutting sound, mimicking my earlier words with exaggerated sincerity. "There's nothing more rewarding than a child's face lighting up. Adorable, really. But let's be honest, in our world, that's just quaint. Can you imagine her at board meetings or galas? She'd stick out like a thrift store find." The group burst into giggles, one cousin adding, "Or hosting dinners, takeout in Tupperware." Amanda nodded triumphantly, her eyes locking on mine without remorse, as if daring me to respond. That was the breaking point. The moment when the accumulated hurts cracked something deep inside me. My chest tightened, tears threatening as I stood there, the room spinning slightly from the champagne and the assault on my dignity. I'd poured my soul into teaching, 60-hour weeks planning lessons, comforting homesick kids, celebrating their tiny triumphs. and to have it dismissed as delusional or cute. When poor people think their jobs matter, it wasn't just insulting, it was erasing who I was. Ryan was still across the room, oblivious in his bubble of family chatter, not noticing my distress signals. I felt utterly alone, surrounded yet invisible, my self-worth crumbling under their gaze. Excusing myself to the terrace once more, the cool breeze whipping my hair, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Daniel's earlier text glowed. "Hope they're treating you well." No, they weren't. "Actually, could you come now? I need support," I typed, adding me address. His response was instant. "On my way. Hang tight." In that moment, texting him felt like grasping a rope in a storm. My brother, who'd always seen my value without question, was my way out of this nightmare. As I finished recounting it all to the now silent foyer, Daniel's face hardened further, his arm tightening around me protectively. Patricia stammered. It was misunderstood, surely, but her excuses fell flat. Amanda shifted, her bravado gone, murmuring something about just joking. The room's energy had shifted irrevocably. The direct confrontations I'd endured now laid bare for judgment. Ryan looked stricken, finally grasping the depth of what I'd faced alone. But as Daniel prepared to respond, I realized this revelation was only the spark. The real fire was about to ignite. The spark ignited as Daniel's words hung in the air, his calm authority drawing every eye in the foyer, transforming the space from a glittering showcase of privilege into a courtroom where their prejudices stood trial. I stood beside him, my red dress no longer feeling like a mark of inadequacy, but a badge of my authenticity. As the guests shifted uneasily, their earlier laughter replaced by throat-clearing and averted gazes. Patricia clasped her hands, her rings clinking softly, while Amanda backed away slightly, her confidence unraveling like a poorly tied bow. Ryan reached for my arm, his touch tentative, but I pulled back, the fire building inside me, mirroring the one Daniel was about to fan. To understand the full weight of this moment, though, I need to circle back to those tense minutes before we stepped inside, when Daniel's arrival turned the night on its head. A dramatic entrance that exposed the fragility of their judgments and revealed the truth I'd kept hidden for good reason. It had been only 20 minutes since I'd slipped out to the driveway, my heart heavy with the evening's assaults, waiting under the starlit sky that seemed vast and indifferent. The estate's gardens whispered in the breeze, their perfection a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within me. I'd paced the gravel, replaying the confrontations, Patricia's powder room lecture, Amanda's fireplace taunts, each one chipping away at my resolve. Then, headlights pierced the darkness, not from a single car but a convoy of sleek black SUVs, their engines purring with quiet power. I blinked, confusion mixing with hope. This wasn't Daniel's usual understated sedan. Security personnel emerged first, 4 of them in dark suits, earpieces glinting, moving with synchronized precision to form a perimeter around the lead vehicle. They scanned the surroundings, their postures alert but non-threatening, a routine born from protecting someone of Daniel's stature. The passenger door of the second SUV opened, and there he was, my brother, stepping out with the effortless poise that came from years of commanding boardrooms and dodging paparazzi. But this wasn't the casual Daniel in jeans and a hoodie who visited my apartment with pizza. This was Daniel Chen in full force, his tailored suit hugging his frame, a subtle watch on his wrist that spoke volumes without shouting. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his eyes, sharp and assessing, softened when they landed on me. "Hey sis," he said, striding over and enveloping me in a hug that smelled of his signature cologne, a blend of sandalwood and success. "You okay?" "Sounded rough in your texts." I nodded against his shoulder, the tears I'd held back threatening to spill now that safety had arrived. "They think I'm after Ryan's money," I whispered. "Mocked everything. My job, my life." He pulled back, his expression hardening. "Then let's show them who you really are. Or rather, remind them that it shouldn't matter." What I hadn't shared with Ryan or his family was this side of my background, a deliberate choice to live authentically. Daniel had started Chen Industries in college, a tiny app that exploded into a tech empire, specializing in innovative software that powered everything from smart cities to AI-driven healthcare. Billions in valuation, headlines in business magazines, partnerships with global giants. But to me, he was the sibling who'd tutored me through math homework and covered my tuition when our parents couldn't. He'd encouraged my independence. Make your mark, Jasmine. Don't ride on mine. So I did, building my teaching career on merit, keeping Chen out of it to avoid the assumptions that came with it. As we approached the mansion's doors, Daniel's security trailing discreetly, I heard the stir inside. Curtains twitching, voices rising in curiosity. More guests? Someone said from within. The door opened, Patricia appearing with a polite smile that froze into shock. "What's all this?" she asked, eyeing the SUVs. Daniel introduced himself smoothly. Daniel Chen, Jasmine's brother. Recognition dawned like a sunrise, her eyes widening as she connected the dots, the name synonymous with innovation and wealth far surpassing their old money circles. Whispers erupted. Chen Industries? The billionaire? Guests crowded the foyer, phones emerging for quick searches, faces paling as profiles loaded. Amanda, peering over her mother's shoulder, went ashen, her earlier barbs replaying in her mind like a bad echo. Ryan pushed forward, his confusion evident. "You're her brother?" The irony hit hard. The family who'd accused me of gold digging now faced someone whose fortune dwarfed theirs, a twist that laid bare their hypocrisy. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. "Yes, and I've heard enough about how you've treated her to know this party's over." The immediate shock rippled outward, uncles muttering about potential business ties, aunts regretting their snide remarks. One cousin who'd laughed at my dress now stammered, "We didn't know." But Daniel shut it down. "That's the point, you shouldn't need to know her connections to treat her with respect." As we stood there, the entrance hall buzzing with this revelation, I felt a shift in myself, the humiliation transforming into quiet power. Security lingered at the edges, a silent reminder of Daniel's world, while the party guests recalculated their stances, panic flickering in their eyes. This entrance wasn't just dramatic, it was a mirror, reflecting their true colors back at them, setting the stage for the confrontations to come. The stage was set for the confrontation, the foyer's chandelier casting long shadows that danced like uneasy spectators on the walls, as Daniel's revelation hung heavy, forcing the Pattersons and their guests to confront the mirror he'd held up to their faces. I could feel the shift in the air, thick with regret and calculation, as eyes darted between us, the security detail a silent backdrop adding to the gravity. Patricia smoothed her dress again, a nervous habit now, while Amanda fidgeted with her necklace, her earlier venom neutralized. Ryan stood frozen, his hand half extended toward me, as if waiting for a cue that wouldn't come. To fully grasp how this unfolded, though, I have to delve into the heart of that exchange, where Daniel's defense peeled back layers of hypocrisy, and my own voice rose to challenge Ryan, culminating in a decision that would sever ties I'd once thought unbreakable. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone was measured, the kind honed in high-stakes meetings where billions were on the line, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Let's be clear," he began, addressing the room but locking eyes with Patricia first. "My sister came here tonight, excited to meet you all, to celebrate love. Instead, you dissected her like she was on trial. Her career, her background, her intentions. Gold digger? Because she teaches kids for a living? Because she doesn't flaunt wealth she could easily access?" He paused, letting the words sink in, and I saw nods turn to shuffles, uncles avoiding his gaze. New memories surfaced for me then, ones I'd buried under the hurt. A family friend earlier in the evening patting my shoulder condescendingly saying, "It's refreshing to see someone so grounded." As if my modesty was a novelty act. Another guest had joked about my student loans over appetizers, implying they were a quaint relic. Daniel wove these in, his knowledge from my texts painting a vivid picture. "You mocked her passion for education, called it delusional. But let me tell you, Jasmine's work shapes futures. She's the one in the trenches, inspiring kids from all walks, giving them tools to succeed. That's real legacy, not inherited fortunes." Patricia interjected, her voice wavering between defense and diplomacy. "Mr. Chen, if we'd known about your accomplishments, we might have understood her better." But Daniel shook his head, exposing the core flaw. "That's the hypocrisy right there. Why does knowing about me change how you see her? Jasmine's worth isn't tied to my success or our family name. She's valuable because of her heart, her dedication, the way she lights up a classroom, the compassion she shows every day. He turned to the group, his gaze sweeping like a spotlight. I've built Chen Industries from a dorm room idea to a global force, but I learned early that true character isn't in bank statements, it's in how you treat people, especially those you think are beneath you. Tonight, you've shown yours, judging her for not fitting your mold, assuming the worst because she didn't arrive dripping in diamonds. Whispers broke out, a cousin murmuring about potential partnerships with Daniel's company, but he shut it down. This isn't about business, it's about basic human decency. Amanda, cornered by her own words, finally spoke up, her face flushed. We didn't mean it that way. It was just talk, you know, if we'd realized who she was. Daniel's response was swift and unyielding. Who she was? She's the same woman you belittled an hour ago, a hard-working teacher who loves your brother for his kindness, not his wallet. The only difference now is you see opportunity in her connections. That says more about you than her. I felt a swell of pride in him, but also a fresh sting as I recalled her imitation of my voice, dismissing my life's work as cute when poor people think they matter. Daniel echoed it back, not to humiliate, but to educate. You meant to make her feel small, unwelcome. You suggested she was here for money, mocked her choices, but Jasmine chose independence, building her career without leaning on family wealth, because she values authenticity. That strength you overlooked. Ryan stepped forward then, his face a mask of remorse, the confrontation turning personal. Jasmine, I'm so sorry, he said, voice thick. I didn't know about any of this. Your brother, the way they treated you, I should have seen it. But his words, sincere as they might have been, missed the mark, tied too closely to the revelation rather than the raw pain. I met his eyes, the man I'd loved for his easy laugh and thoughtful ways, and felt the crack widen. Ryan, it's not about Daniel showing up, I said quietly, my voice gaining strength from the silence around us. It's about you not noticing all night. Your family tore me apart, whispers, mocks, doubts, and you were right there, laughing with them, oblivious. Where was the defense when Patricia questioned our compatibility? When Amanda ridiculed my job? You claimed to love me, but you let me stand alone in a room full of judgment. He recoiled, as if struck, stammering, I thought it was just family stuff. I didn't realize. But that was the point. He hadn't bothered to look beyond his comfort zone. The room absorbed the exchange, Patricia making a last-ditch effort. Please, let's discuss this privately. We can start fresh. But Daniel squeezed my shoulder. No need. You've already shown who you are, valuing people only when they might benefit you. I nodded, the decision crystallizing. I couldn't build a life on conditional acceptance. I'm done, I told Ryan, slipping off the ring and placing it in his palm. Find someone your family deems worthy. I already know I am. As we turned to leave, the whispers turned frantic, calculations of lost opportunities buzzing like bees. But I walked out with my head high, Daniel's arm linked in mine, the confrontation not just exposing them, but freeing me. Walking away from that mansion felt like shedding a skin that had never fit right, the gravel crunching under our feet, as Daniel and I headed toward the waiting SUVs. The night air now carrying a sense of liberation rather than oppression. Behind us, the doors remained open, spilling light and frantic voices into the darkness. Patricia calling out one last plea, Amanda silent for once, Ryan's figure silhouetted in the doorway, his calls fading as we drove off. The convoy's engines hummed smoothly, security lights flashing briefly, and Daniel glanced at me from the leather seat. You did good in there, he said, his voice warm with pride. Handled it with grace they didn't deserve. I nodded, the engagement ring already off my finger, tucked into my purse like a relic from another life. But to capture the full aftermath, the way one shattering night rebuilt me stronger, I have to trace the steps that followed, from the immediate fallout to the fresh starts that bloomed in its wake, lessons etched deep into my heart. The drive back to my apartment was quiet at first, the city lights blurring past like distant stars, giving me space to process. Daniel didn't push. He knew me well enough to let the silence heal. I should have told Ryan about you sooner, I admitted finally, staring at my hands. He shook his head. No, you were right to keep it private. Wanted love on your terms, not mine. But next time, maybe loop me in earlier if things go south. We shared a small laugh, the tension easing, and by the time we reached my door, I felt a weight lifting. Not just from the party, but from the doubts I'd carried all evening. The next morning, sunlight filtered through my curtains, casting warm patterns on the floor, and I made the call. A messenger delivered the ring back to Ryan with a simple note. I hope you find someone your family considers worthy. I hope you find someone who knows you already are. His texts flooded in. Apologies, explanations, pleas for another chance, but they rang hollow, echoes of a man who'd failed to stand up when it counted. I blocked the number, not out of anger, but closure. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects spread. Whispers reached me through mutual acquaintances. Patricia scrambling to salvage social ties, fearing Daniel's influence on business circles. Amanda posting vague apologies on social media, her usual bravado tempered. Uncle Gerald even sent a formal letter, rambling about misunderstandings, but I filed it away unread. Daniel fielded calls from Patterson Associates, politely declining overtures, his message clear. Actions have consequences. But for me, the real change was internal. I threw myself back into teaching with renewed vigor, my third graders' eager faces a balm for the bruises. Lesson plans flowed easier, parent meetings felt more meaningful, as if affirming my path had reignited the spark. Friends rallied around me, nights out, turning into heart-to-hearts where I shared the story, their outrage mirroring my own healing. You dodged a bullet, one said over coffee, and she was right. The experience stripped away illusions, revealing what I truly deserved. Respect without conditions, love without caveats. 3 months later, life surprised me again, this time gently, like a soft rain after drought. At a teacher conference downtown, I met Alex, a fellow educator specializing in science for middle schoolers. He bumped into me at the coffee station. Echoes of how I'd met Ryan, but without the spill or the glamour. Sorry about that, he grinned, helping gather my scattered notes. We talked for hours during breaks. About curriculum challenges, favorite student breakthroughs, the joy of hands-on experiments. His passion matched mine, eyes lighting up when I described my reading programs. No glaze of boredom, just genuine curiosity. Dates followed naturally. Picnics in the park with homemade sandwiches, walks through museums on free days, evenings grading papers side by side with takeout and laughter. Alex came from a similar world. Modest salary, family of hardworking folks, no hidden empires. When I introduced him to Daniel over dinner, he was impressed but unfazed, shaking hands firmly. I've heard about your work, Alex said, but Jasmine's the real star here. Daniel smiled approvingly, later telling me, he sees you truly, that's what matters. Reflecting now, that night at the party wasn't just a humiliation. It was a catalyst, teaching me that self-worth blooms from within, not from others' approval. The Pattersons' world, with its diamonds and disdain, exposed the shallowness of conditional acceptance, while Daniel's defense reminded me of unbreakable bonds. I learned to spot red flags earlier, the oblivious partner, the judgmental circle, and to embrace my choices unapologetically. Teaching remained my anchor, a reminder that impact isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched. If this resonates, remember, never dim your light for those who can't see its value. Your character, your kindness, that's the true fortune. Smash that like if you've been there, share with someone who needs the reminder. And subscribe for more stories of turning trials into triumphs. As the echoes of that fateful evening faded into memory, I found myself settling into a quieter rhythm, where days unfolded with the gentle predictability of turning pages in a well-loved book. The sharp edges of humiliation softened over time, replaced by a deeper appreciation for the simple joys that had always grounded me. Morning sunlight spilling across my lesson plans, the chatter of children discovering new worlds through stories and sums. Alex became a steady presence, his hand in mine during evening strolls, conversations meandering from classroom anecdotes to dreams of future adventures, always rooted in mutual respect rather than spectacle. Daniel checked in often, our bond stronger, sharing laughs over family dinners that celebrated authenticity over opulence. Looking back, I realized the true gift of that night was clarity. It stripped away illusions, revealing that worth isn't forged in grand estates or whispered approvals, but in the quiet strength of living true to oneself. As seasons shifted, leaves turning gold then bare, I carried forward with a lighter heart, whispering to myself in moments of doubt that I was enough, always had been. And in that whisper, peace settled like a soft blanket, wrapping me in the certainty that love, when real, asks for nothing but your genuine self.